Joined by the Shadow Business Secretary, John Denham. Welcome to our
Hello.
Daily Politics Conference special. The Leader of the Opposition told Nick Robinson in a clip we were in, you were watching it from the sidelines there, that he didn't want wealth built on sand.
Mm-hmm.
But when your government was taking billions and billions of pounds in revenues from banks like the Royal Bank of Scotland and others in the mid part of the decade, using it to build schools and hospitals, was that wealth built on sand?
The reality was that that approach to the economy wasn't one that's sustainable in the long term, and that's why Ed Miliband yesterday was talking about the rules.
But you didn't know at the time, when you were taking all that money, billions of pounds from financial services, you didn't know, and you certainly didn't say it was wealth built on sand.
But the point about where we are now after losing an election and after the banking crisis is to say, do we understand what needs to be done in the future? We have a record as a government that I'm very proud of, but there were things that happened and things that we didn't get right, which we need to change in the future.
But my point to you, John Denham, I'm trying to get you to address, is that you do not know, not just you, all of us, we do not know when wealth is built on sand and when it isn't. Who would have thought that the Royal Bank of Scotland turned out to be wealth built on sand?
I think that we can say that if we have as many companies as possible which invest long-term, which train their staff, which take the environment seriously, which want their customers to be with them in 15 years' time, not just in 15 minutes' time, those companies are the ones that are most likely to bring success to this country.
But we've always known that.
Yes, but we don't have an environment that fosters that. So it has often been possible to make more money by doing much more short-term things than by building a long-term business. So what government's got to do, much more seriously than we've ever done before, is create the environment for those good companies to grow. And the first thing I'll say is you won't get good companies without good government. If government chops and changes its policy every 5 minutes...
But are you going to penalise companies that don't follow what you regard as good practice?
You can't come in after a company's done something and then say, we're now going to punish you. You've got to get the incentives right in the first place. This is not about morality. It's recognising that if the rules of the game say to a business, you can make more money by speculation than by investing long-term, people will. So let's get the rules right so that the companies that build their wealth in the long term grow.
But this company is full of this country is full of companies that invest for the long term.
But if you look at our economy,
Isn't it?
there are not enough of them for the size of our country to pay our way in the world. We have brilliant companies, but we also have companies with business models that are much more short-term.
For example?
I'm not going to name the companies.
Why?
Because no company fits entirely into one category or another.
But if you can't name companies, it's impossible to have a proper debate.
What you can do
it's a theoretical debate for an Oxbridge common room.
It's about looking at the features in companies that you want to encourage, like long-term investment, like fair rewards, like training their staff, and we need more of those companies in more sectors of the economy. And everything we're talking about doing is about changing the rules of the economy so that
What rule will you change?
Well, for example, you have rules on investment return which actually mean there can be incentives to buy into a young company and then sell it on within 5 years instead of keeping your capital in to enable it to grow. So we need to look in detail at the tax treatment of those investments so that more of our good small companies become big companies.
But how do you know that it might not be a good thing to sell the company on in 5 years to another company, a trade sale that wants to acquire it and grow it?
And I don't see
how can you stop that or know when it's a bad thing?
I think you have to make judgments about what sort of deals you want to incentivise. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of somebody who got that investment and chose to sell on after 5 years. Too many small businesses say they have no option, that when you get venture capital in, after 5 years, the capital has to be released. So we can look at how you change the rules to foster a different type of behaviour. And it does mean making judgments about the types of business models you want to reward.
How many ministers in the Shadow Cabinet have first-hand business experience?
I don't know how many do. I haven't done a head count round the table.
Who has?
I set up a social enterprise very successfully myself 30 years ago. But if you say, have we got a cabinet?
Did you have any business folk in the cabinet?
We've got lots of business people around the party who have advised us on this. I'll have to sit here and go through them. I don't think there are any that come to mind that have made their main careers in business.
And yet you think you can though you have your shadow cabinet has no business experience, yet you think you can judge when wealth is not based on sand, when it would be good or bad to sell a company on in 5 years' time, whether venture capital lays down the right decisions? You have no qualifications for any of that.
Because what was said yesterday, and what I was saying the day before in Ed Balls, has not come out of thin air. Andrew, if you talk to business, this is a discussion that they are having. It's the conflict that they often find between long-term wealth creation and short-term decisions. It's the dilemmas faced by small companies that want to grow, that can't get the finance. This is not a Labour Party-invented debate. This is what British business is talking about today. So the reason that we're talking about it is because we've been listening to businesses since the last election, and this is what they are asking us to raise and to talk about.
Well, that's not been the reaction of business. Every business spokesman we've heard from is very, very sniffy about what you're proposing. Tell me one major business figure that has supported the line Mr. Miliband took yesterday.
There have been plenty of people, I think John Cridland from the CBI, backed the idea of companies investing in the long term.
Of course, everybody believes that. Ted Heath used to ask for that.
Nobody has challenged the idea that you can foster those types of companies.
That's not controversial.
It is a change in the rules to the way it works at the moment. Andrew, that's not the way our economy works at the moment. At the moment, we don't have a system of incentives, of government policy making, of rewards which actually foster those types of business.
You didn't do any of that for 14 years in power?
We did some of it.
What did you do? Why didn't you do more?
We invested in training. We had crucial decisions, which Ed was talking about earlier, about energy policy, which laid down a long-term framework. So we did do...
Oh, excuse me, you're telling us now that you've got to take the 6 major energy companies to court over predatory pricing.
So we did some of the things, but we didn't do all of them. However, if you're saying to me we shouldn't try and make this choice, that we shouldn't try to foster that environment, then I don't believe this country would be competitive in the future.
Your leader divided people and companies and practices into producers and predators. Now, he lauded John Rose, who was then the head of Rolls-Royce, as a producer. He's now deputy chairman of an investment bank. Is he a predator now?
Well, what's wrong with an investment? There's nothing per se wrong about an investment bank. Well, if you, though, buy into a company, load it with debt, strip its assets and leave it as a husk, that is not a helpful business model.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the Rothschild Group does? Do you know what investment banks do? They often arrange mergers and acquisitions, and M&As can involve asset stripping. That's often the purpose of them. Now, so is he now a predator?
No. What you're talking about here is you're saying, if you're going to be in that sort of activity, do the tax rewards, the financial rewards, reward the mergers which build a strong long-term business. If they do, then that's good. If government gets the rules wrong and they can make more money by taking assets out, you don't blame the company for doing it. You don't blame the individuals involved. You say government's got to get the rules right.
Were you proud of your party when parts of it booed the name of Tony Blair yesterday?
No, and I think, you know, the truth is that Ed's speech was very clear. He said he wasn't Tony, he wasn't Gordon, he was his own man. That was his point.
But it is the end of the Blairism, isn't that what he said? He told it at the BBC radio this morning that this was the end of the Thatcher-Blair era.
I think to the extent that the idea was that we should be completely neutral about which types of business models which took place, as long as they were business, we have to go beyond that, because if we're going to pay our way in a world which has a rising China, a rising India, we need more of those companies that are going to invest in the long term.
But can you understand why people are puzzled that your own party should boo what was regarded as the most successful Labour leader ever?
I was in the hall. I don't think it was very many people who did it, OK?
That was remarkably... Do you think a Tory conference would ever boo Margaret Thatcher?
I wouldn't have thought so, no. But the truth is that wasn't Ed's message. Ed's message was we are moving on, but actually, what did he say about Gordon and Tony? 2 of the greatest leaders this party has had. That's what Ed said yesterday, and don't forget that.
Did they applaud that bit?
Yes, they did.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
We better have a look at the tape.
You better have, haven't you, yes.
They didn't boo you, though, did they?
They didn't boo me, no.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you,
John
Andrew.
Denham, thank you for being with us.